All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. And in this video, we're going to be in the 154 pound division, where we're going to talk about Jermell Charlo, Terrence Crawford, and Jaron Boots Ennis. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're going to be in the 154 pound division, where Jermell Charlo stated that he is making his return. He is back training, and the fight should be made between he and the winner of Tim Tszyu and Keith Thurman. But it also could be made with Terrence Crawford and a mystery third person or a surprise third person, Jaron Boots Ennis. Had some people talk to some people about what is going to take place in this division. Before I get into the details of it, though, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you're new to the channel, please accept my invitation to hit the subscribe button. Also, if you are a longtime subscriber, supporter, thank you. And thank you to everybody that supports in the super thanks. Matty Yo, Barbara D, Coach Ari, everybody. But look, Terrence Crawford is got a pipe dream. No disrespect to Terrence Crawford, but Terrence Crawford is out there. I think is out there in fantasy land with exactly what it is he thinks he's going to be doing next, which is fight either Tim Tszyu. I don't understand why he'd want to fight Tim Tszyu and not Jermell Charlo, or Canelo Alvarez. Doesn't really make a lot of sense to me why he thinks he's going to get those fights, because Canelo Alvarez is not acting like he's interested at all. Tim Tszyu fights for the PBC and really is not that big name, not a big name fighter. And a fight between Terrence Crawford and Jermell Charlo, I think, would be a bigger fight than anyone he would have with Tim Tszyu. But also, he doesn't want to fight Jaron Ennis. So what is the solution? Somebody came by my channel. We had a really good conversation, and they talked about a solution for Terrence Crawford could be to go fight Aleem Janibek. I thought about it and I was like, well, that is not going to really work for what's going on with Terrence Crawford and Top Rank, because he sued Top Rank. Janibek is a Top Rank fighter. Top Rank is not going to feed him Janibek or really make some big money fight for him at all with Janibek. So, but it brought me back to something that somebody else had mentioned about how Jaron Ennis needs to move to 154 pounds because he can't get fights at 147. Now, personally, I think that's erroneous. I think that there's so many people talking about how inactive PBC fighters are that anytime you hear somebody that you may associate with the PBC, because I don't think Jaron Ennis is actually signed to Al Haymon, but he does fight on the PBC cards. Whenever somebody hears their name, they just go with that narrative that they're all inactive, which is not the case. Jaron Ennis was not inactive last year. Jaron Ennis fought twice last year. The only year that I've known him to be only times I've known him to be inactive was 2022, when Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. held up the second half of the year because they were in negotiations for their fight. Other than that, and a few years before that, when he had some managerial issues, Jaron Ennis is only 26 years old and he's got 30 fights. He's not been inactive. But if you say, okay, well, Jaron Ennis, if he really wants to put himself in a good best position to unify, what's his best position? His best position would be a fight with Jermell Charlo for both the, I do believe, the WBA and the IBF belt. And he's the IBF champion at 147 pounds. So it may not be too difficult for him to move up to 154 pounds if he wants to do that and fight Jermell Charlo for those belts. I think those guys would probably make it on a pay-per-view fight. I think that it would be a very, very good fight. And if he was able to really do a job or beat Jermell Charlo hey man, he really does elevate himself considerably. Now, the downside of that is that he's not in a money division like the 147 pound division, where there are other fighters who are going to be moving up into that division. You have Teofimo Lopez, who is going to be there not too long. You have Devin Haney, who's going to be there in not too long. You've got Jose Ramirez. You've got Josh Taylor, who's already there. Those guys all have name recognition already and could be in the position to fight Jaron Ennis. Now, obviously, the benefit for Jaron Ennis to be at 154 is that there are more PBC fighters there, which will be easier for him to get fights against, right? Like a Tim Tszyu, like a Jermell Charlo, and Danny Garcia if he's in that division, Keith Thurman if he decides to stay in that division, Errol Spence if Errol Spence Jr. decides to stay at 154 pounds. Those are a lot of fights that he can make there. The difficulty again with 147 pounds is the guys that are going to move up there are definitely going to be hiding behind a wall when it comes to Jaron Ennis. But for my own guilty pleasure, that's what I want to see. I want to see him hide behind the wall. And by the wall, I mean the promotional wall. They're going to definitely not be trying to cross over to get with Jaron. And that is Teofimo. That applies to all of them. Teofimo Lopez, no. Devin Haney, no. Jose Ramirez, no. And Josh Taylor, no. But the good thing, though, is that I do believe two of the belts, the other two belts in 147 pounds, are already with the PBC, which is Mario Barrios, who should be fighting for the WBC belt whenever Terrence Crawford relinquishes it, and the WBA, which is Amanda Stanionis, and that Amanda Stanionis is going to get as soon as, or he will be the full champion as soon as Terrence Crawford vacates that WBA Super Championship. Now, the interesting thing with that is that I'm going to continue to repeat that Stanionis would be the whole champion. He does not get elevated, unlike what people had said about so erroneously about Gervonta Davis having been elevated to an email champion when he doesn't have the WBA super belt. He has the WBA World Championship belt that he's had for years. But, you know, the rules get lost on people when they don't want to know the rules and it doesn't necessarily work for their arguments. But at the end of the day, I want to say if Jaron Ennis wants to get a unified championship, he can. I think Jermell Charlo would be a great fight for him. I really think the way that it's going to pan out, though, is I think that Jermell Charlo is going to fight Tim Tszyu after the fight with Keith Thurman, the 155 pound catchweight fight. I believe that fight more than likely is the one that's going to take place. And the reason that I believe that is, again, that's in-house money for the PBC. Terrence Crawford is too unpredictable in what he wants to do, and in the negotiations with him, it's too unpredictable. So, and the PBC doesn't represent him. So, you know, it is what it is. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. Please let me know what you think in the comments section. And with that, I'm out. Deuces.